What is up, traders? Welcome back to Clover Trading. My name is Kyle Williams, for those who do not know. And in today's video, we're gonna talk about just how much money I've lost over my trading career.
I'm only burning my half.
You know, I am up, technically, as the time of this recording, I am up over $4 million in trading profits total. But like any profitable strategy, like any healthy strategy of trading, you also lose money. No one trading strategy is perfect. You have to lose money. It is part of the game.
It's in the game.
You trying to avoid losing money will result in you actually losing more money, okay? It is unavoidable. It's going to happen. Over my career, like I said, I have netted over $4 million. But how much have I totally actually made? If we just, hypothetically, in this utopian scenario, right? If we had looked at just every single profitable trade I've made and only counted every profitable trade I've made, which would be my total gross profit, right? I've actually made 7 million. But if we look at every trade that I ever lost on, right? Let's say every trade I took was only a loser. I've actually lost 3 million. Made over 7, or a little over 7, lost 3, hence I'm a little bit over $4 million in trading profits. Okay, so that's my gross win and my gross loss. Let's talk about the gross losses. Like, how on earth, you know, yeah, it's great I've made 4 million, but how on earth can I get to the point of looking at my stats and being like, oh my gosh, Kyle, you've actually at any given point in your career on all those losing trades added up have lost a cumulative of $3 million. It's, I don't want to say impressive is the word, but it's kind of a little bit, makes you take a step back. I'm like, wow, I've lost that much money along the way of making money as a profitable trader, right? And so I want to talk about like really the 5 main things that I found in my trading that was a common theme. These are the 5 things that I think most traders deal with, especially myself, that has really led to me losing close to 50% of that 3 million. I did the math, I ran through the trades, all my trades, which ones were like the biggest losers, which ones that every time I broke one of these 5 rules or these dilemmas or these struggles that I've had, it's led to me losing 1.4 million. So almost half of that 3 million has been due to these 5 issues. Okay. Now, granted, no matter what happens, there's always going to be losses, right? Like I said, losses are unavoidable. But in a perfect world, let's say if I was a perfect trader and the only losses I took were because I genuinely took a trade that just didn't work. It was just part of my trading strategy. It was part of the losses I have to take. It was an average loss. It was an acceptable loss. I stopped at where I said I would. I wouldn't get stubborn, right? I would have only lost 1.6. Theoretically, you could say I could have another $1.4 million in my pocket had I not have lost it breaking these 5 rules or continually having to deal with these 5 struggles in my trading. So let's jump right in. Let's talk about those things. The first topic, or the struggle that I had to continually remind myself not to do, is thinking only about how much I can make and not how much I can lose before I go into a trade. Almost 99% of the times when I go into a trade thinking about how much I can only make and not even considering how much could I lose if I'm wrong, usually leads to me being wrong and me taking a loss that I did not expect, that I did not plan for, simply because I didn't even consider it. I just thought, oh my gosh, I want a big win. If this trade works out right, I'm gonna make 50 grand. Let's go in with that amount of dollar size and not think about the rest of it all. When going to the trade, if you want to be a really good trader, if you want to be an excellent trader, you have to go in every single time with risk first. Risk is number 1. If I go in, what am I willing to lose? It could be as little as $50. It could be $500. It could be $5,000. It could be, if you're a multi-millionaire trader, you could be losing 50K. But the important part is that you've set that number, you're accepting of that number, and that is the first and foremost number that you think of before you even consider entering the trade. Before you even consider knowing the ticker. I don't even have to know or look at a chart to know that on average, I am willing to accept a 5K loss on any given trade I take. Usually it's sometimes 4, sometimes 5, but in that range is around my average loss, and I'm okay with that. So when I go into a trade, I need to know, okay, here's my risk level. If I stop out here, I'm losing 5 grand, period. When I don't do that, some of my biggest losses come from that. So that's number 1. Number 2 is either no risk at all or no trade plan. This kind of ties into number 1 of just not even thinking about a dollar risk, right? Like I said, number 1 is not having even a dollar risk. You just only think about how much you can make. This second one is not necessarily a dollar risk. It is a price risk. It is a trade plan. It is going in literally not really having a plan and not really picking a price level of risk where I am convicted that if I break that risk level, I don't want to be in the trade anymore. Like, I trust that level. It's one thing to just pick a level and be like, if it stops, if it goes, price goes there, I'll get out, and not really find any meaning behind it, not really find any significance behind it, okay? And so a perfect example of this is HKD. For those who don't know what HKD is, it was a ticker that started down all the way to $13 and ran as high as 2,500 over like 6 or 7 days. Now, I don't have the daily chart up here. I'll show you when I'm done here, but I have the intraday action here of when I actually took this trade. This falls into the second rule of no real true risk or trade plan, because I genuinely shorted this and never had a true solid risk plan. And I'll show you why. Thing was running, right? Started at $13. And in today's action, we go from nearly $70. Let me zoom in here to show you, right? We go, again, we started at 13 and we start running. We're at 70, we're at 80, 90, 100, 110, 120, 130, 140, 150, 160. Before you know it, we're up 100% in a day, well over, right? And hundreds of percent in the last week. I'm like, whoa, this is too much. This isn't used to what I'm seeing. Again, which is everyone's case, right? This thing went to 2,500. Just because I thought it was enough does not mean it was eventually enough, right? And so what do? I just start shorting. I remember taking a few starter positions here. It kind of worked, so I felt good about myself. I thought the trade was working. It kept going. I added some more into the close. I ended up having like a 160s average, right? And I say to myself, okay, tomorrow this thing should gap down big. No ticker like that runs as much does this. I'm gonna risk the highs of 198, call it $200. And everything's gonna be dandy. In my mind, and as I'm saying, you may think I have a risk level, but I knew deep down when I made that trade plan, I'm like, I don't really care if it breaks 200. I'm like, this thing is up so much that I don't really care. I was too almost lackadaisical at the fact that I was gonna be right. And what do you know the next day? It squeezes. Yeah, and we do gap down. Again, there's these little hints that kind of try to make me convince my brain that like, okay, well, you're right. When reality keeps going against me, even though I'm right for a very short period of time. And so it goes squeeze up all the way to 250. Did I cut over 200? Nope. Cracked super hard from 250 nearly down to 150. And so what do? I say, oh, my new risk level is going to be 250 now. That's clearly the better level, right? 200 clearly wasn't meaningful because it didn't stop out there and it went over it and then it went under it. So let's do 250 now. Well, as you can see, it came back, it kept grinding, and then it breaks 250. Did I cut there? No. Again, I did not respect my risk. I never even solidified truly in my brain and being 100% honest with myself that was a risk level I can trust and will take the loss at, or let alone put a stop loss in so like a broker or the market maker can physically take me out and put my own discretion out of it, right? And so it keeps going, right? We go 300. We go 400. And before you know it, we're in the high 400s by the end of the day. And at that point, I soon realized it kind of hits me like a ton of bricks. I finally come to the realization, I finally come back to earth and realize, Kyle, you have not respected your risk level, not once, not twice, not 3 times, not 4 times now. You need to get out. You are dead wrong. You never had a solid trade plan to begin with. Get out. So finally, I do cover here in the mid 300s, high 400s, or mid 400s, I should say, given that literally is that big of a spread at this point in this range. I end up losing over 250 grand. Okay, so 250 grand of that 1.4 million is just on this trade alone, which was again a big chunk. But this isn't the first time I've done this, right? I've done this multiple times. Maybe it was when I have a smaller account and lost smaller amounts. But again, rule number 2 or struggle number 2 is truly setting a trade plan and risk price level that you know 100% certainty you will stop out of that. Because the moment you don't, you can play that game of like, oh, I'll just risk more. Oh, I'll just risk more. And there's no actual cutoff point. And that's why having a max stop loss is super important for many traders. That's why having automatic stop losses for a lot of traders is also very important to kind of take yourself out of this in case this type of thing happens. Anyways, number 3, mixing investing with trading. This may be a little more of a unique thing for me, but what happened to me was I got very, I guess you can say convicted or invested, not financially invested, but emotionally invested or theoretically invested, my thesis around crypto. Originally, I was right. The problem is it went from me trading crypto very frequently to the point in the stock market to then investing in it and almost dynamically changing my plan from being a trade into a long-term investment. And it wasn't because I got bag held per se. It wasn't like, oh, I took a long and I broke my stop loss and then I was down so much on it that I just said, oh, screw it, it's a long-term investment now. It's like I started trading it all throughout up this run in Bitcoin on GBTC. And then I remember saying, screw it, I'm just gonna buy it for the long term. Like I'm trading it so often, I think crypto is gonna go up, at least in the short term. Let me just buy it. And I actually buy it in this area right here in like the high 20s. And very quickly I'm right. And before you know it, 3 or 4 months later, I'm almost up 100%. And not just on this, but on a few other names, which I'll bring up here. I was up so much, I'm like, oh my gosh, the odds of this going back to my entry is slim to none. I'm just gonna keep it for the next year or two and see how we do. Because I think it's gonna go up even more. Almost to the point where like greed got the best of me and I ignored my trading concepts, again, like I said, and just let the investing side of it override it. And so what happens? As you can see, it just bleeds. Not only did, crypto die hard, but the stock market had, one of its first recessions in over 10 plus years. Crypto is no safety net to avoid that, right? And so what happens from me having a high 20s and then end up having a low 30s average from adding as this keep going higher, it goes lower and lower. Before you know it, I'm down. And again, letting that investing thesis take over what I originally entered for turned into kind of bag holding, turned into then saying, oh, well, I'll just keep holding on to it. Well, one good thing about this is that I eventually do come back to earth and I finally realized, nope, we're done. I can't keep mixing this investing with trading kind of thing. And I cut it. I finally killed it and sold the position down here. Unfortunately, it is near the lows as of this point, but you never know. Crypto could always go lower as we've seen. So really mixing with it, right? Not having a trade plan. Again, you'll notice a theme here that all 5 of these things kind of interlayer and intertwine with each other in a sense that once it turned into an investing thing for me, any trade plan or trade thesis or trade psychology that I had around it originally went out the door. It turned into kind of a bag hold. It just kind of kept bleeding. And I said, I'm investing. I'm a long term. Not the case. I ended up losing well over 100 grand here. I lost over, I believe, 60 grand on ETHE. It's the same thing equivalent, but for Ethereum, right? Did the same thing, bought it up in here in the high 20s, was originally really right, ended up getting crushed, ended up selling it in the like 12s or 13s. Same thing with ETCG. I believe I lost 100 grand on this one. Again, buying it in the 30 range. Kind of right. I unfortunately missed this run, but then just bleeding, right? Just immediate bleeding. Same thing with LTCN. Same thing here. Got it in here. Spike, thought I was right. And maybe that was the mistake, is that like my trading thesis to me immediately be right over this kind of short-term swing got my greed just too high and high strung, right? To where it then immediately shifted and I was a goner. So hopefully you learn from that. Again, between all this, I lost like probably close to 400 grand between these four tickers around roughly. So again, a huge chunk of that 1.4 million. You do, at least for me, make sure you need to separate trading theses and trading plans with long-term investing, and ideally in something a little more stable, not something that's as volatile as crypto, especially the stock related versions of crypto. They can get just crushed and bleed much further than you expect. Number 4, getting too stubborn, thinking you can kind of be right and end up giving a stock too many tries. And now what I mean by that is, let's say I have the other first 3 problems and struggles under my belt. I have a trade plan. I have a risk level. I'm willing to cut my loss at a certain price, but I keep coming back. It's almost like revenge trading, right? I keep coming back for more and more and more. And I can't help but think I'm gonna be right. I'm gonna eventually buy it. All I have to do is nail this one last trade and I'm gonna be right, even though I've missed it 7 times. Giving something too many attempts over and over and over again. And what happened on this particular example, the best example of me breaking this rule or having this kind of downward spiral, was on VERU. It was on this day when it ran from $6 or $7 all the way as high as 14, full 100% move. I remember I started shorting it in the 9s and I just kept giving it a try after try after try. And before you know it, I lost 60 grand in the day. It was like probably like 7 or 8 tries of losing 7 to 8 grand each. And it just kept coming and coming and again and again and again. And before you know it, I finally look at my P&L and I'm like, holy crap, Kyle, what are you doing? Let's go to the intraday here. Like I said earlier, the parabolic from 6 to 7 or 6 to 14. Again, I started getting short right in here. Let's go back. Right in the 9s. I started getting short right in here. And originally I was kind of right. But then first loss, I cut it. It stops out here. I remember kind of starting in to where it wasn't full size. I needed to cut it yet. It goes even higher. I added more. Pulls back. I'm right. Cuts again. Pulls back again. I reshort some more. Pulls up some more. I cut that. Short again. Cut it again. Short it one more time. It chops around. Fades off a bit. Thinking I'm going to be right. And then comes back again. And I cut it again. And that's at least what I remember. I'm pretty sure there were two or three more attempts in here that I just kept trying and trying and trying. And again, it wasn't a matter of not being able to cut it. I cut it every single time I took the trade. The problem is that it turned into a revenge trading where it didn't really matter now what I was losing. I just wanted to give it another chance. And so instead of kind of either limiting myself to a certain amount of attempts, which now I usually do no more than 3 to 5, so I don't get caught up in doing 7, 8, 9, 10 attempts, but also recognizing how much am I willing to risk per attempt. You know, even for taking, let's say I took 10 attempts on VERU, to still lose 60 grand on it means I was giving each attempt 6 grand, which is over the average amount of 5 grand, like I said in the earlier this video, of what I'm willing to lose. So I was already too aggressive and too emotional to begin with. And that's kind of what a revenge trading is in a very deep form, or simple form, I should say. It's just you kept going back and back and back, and you have to be able to step away and be like, you've lost 3 or 4 or 5 times in a row. It's time to give up. It's time to throw in the towel. This is one of those tickers you're just not going to make money on. And to this day, I am still red from this loss on VERU. I never made my money back, and that's okay, right? There are plenty of other tickers that I've made far more amount of money on that I don't need to be green on this ticker to be profitable. And I think that's very important for traders to realize. Now, in the last and final 5th one, there's no particular ticker, but again, it overlaps with the other 4 that I've mentioned. It's just being too emotional and being too aggressive. And I think I put this as last because this little topic of being too aggressive or too emotional is kind of a bigger, broader, overlying cloud, if you want to call it, of the bottom 4. Any one of those 4 can be triggered because I'm too emotional, because I'm being too aggressive, right? Whether I want to have too big of a win, whether it be, again, revenge trading, I get too emotional, I take a loss and I want to just make it back. Or again, like investing, right? I was originally right on a trade thesis, so it turns into an investment because I'm greedy. Again, being too aggressive, letting the emotions take control of me, and then immediately seeing it turn into a loss. And again, getting even more emotional, digging down, being stubborn, sticking to that thesis, even though it's dead wrong at that point, right? So again, not so much of an in-depth 5th struggle here, but kind of an overlying common theme that you're gonna see, not only in these the first 4 that I mentioned, but any struggles that you have really comes down to either just the level of emotions, whether it be greed, stubbornness, revenging, all those things, over trading, or down to just straight up over aggressiveness, thinking you can make more when you really can't, thinking you have more money than you actually do in your account, and all of a sudden you've blown it up and you wonder how you got there. I know I've heard plenty of stories like that. I've certainly had an account or 2 that's done that to me, or that I've done to the account per se. So anyways, guys, thanks so much. Those are the 5 things that really I've always struggled with, and I put in many rules since then to mitigate those things. But it just goes to show, like, best you can do at mitigating those things can save you so much more money than you realize. And in my case, save me $1.4 million. That's a lot. I would love to say in the next 5 to 10 years, look back and be like, wow, I didn't break those rules as many times and I saved myself $1.4 million. So anyways, guys, thanks so much for watching the video. Comment down below what your biggest struggles are. If they're one of those 5, if they're all those 5, maybe there's one I didn't mention that you'll deal with. Again, like and subscribe. If you're not in the chat room, get in the chat room. We'd love to have you in there, guide you along your trading journey and make sure you don't make any of these mistakes that I have made. So anyway, guys, thanks so much. We'll see you guys next time. Peace out.